All right, Nick and Andy, deadline day is nearly here. So let's predict it, have a look at which teams need to do some business, which players could be on the move, some of those developing deals. Nick, when we look at sort of predictions-wise, we've been predicting all January that Marcus Rashford is going to go somewhere, but kind of the prediction has changed, I think, time and time again whenever we've talked about it. And I mean, a few days ago, it seemed like he was out with Ruben Amorim saying what he said after the Fulham win. And then now Ruben Amorim's kind of just pulled back a little bit on that and said, yeah, maybe, there's a way back in for him. But let's talk about Rashford to start with. What do you predict is happening for him in these final few hours, I guess, of the window? Because not really many takers for him right now.
Yeah, you're going to have to tell me. I think we need to get a Premier League accountant in here, someone who understands the financial rules, because it's one of the big questions of the window, right? You get a team like City, who, for all the drama that's been there, has spent so much money, and yet we spent this summer watching Newcastle and West Ham and Everton and Villa potentially trading players, essentially. So what does Rashford's salary mean to people? Because I have to believe there's a team out there thinking, well, if you don't stick me with a fee, I will absolutely pay him for 6 months and see what happens. And the fact that Amorim has pulled back makes me believe very strongly that he's at least thinking, I might have to use this guy at some point this year. Mm-hmm. And so I would guess that he's going nowhere. And I hate it because I don't want to talk about it ever again. And clearly we will.
Yeah, true. Yeah, it's one of those things where it's like, for him, it's better for the club if they did find a new place, but clearly it's not going to happen right now. So that's a pretty safe prediction, I think, about Rashford. But you never know. It's crazy. Deadline day gets pretty wild at the end. Someone could come in with a late bid. Andy, another striker. Looks like, again, we've been talking about it for a long time, is Evan Ferguson. Brighton have been talking about him. Fabian Herzler's been talking about how, talking him up a bit, and he likes working with him and all the rest of it, but he's barely featured this season. Yep. There's been a little bit of, negativity from Herzler about Ferguson and sort of training and attitude and all the rest of it. So, but he's a very good player when he's fit. We know that. We still saw that when he burst on the scene a couple of seasons ago. Like a West Ham, maybe a reunion with Graham Potter there, something like that. That seems like it would be a pretty good fit. And a lot of Premier League teams would be in for him, right?
Yeah, I love the West Ham shout. I hadn't even thought about the Potter factor there. Of all the great transfer business ins and outs that Brighton have done in recent years, this is kind of the one that they've bundled a little bit. I mean, they had a 50, 60, 70, 80 million dollar bids just was it a year or 18 months ago when he first broke through, and the big clubs, I know United was interested, pretty sure Arsenal was interested, and I know Spurs were interested. And so you've got three of the big boys that interested, and they just said, no, we're keeping him because we think he's an incredible prospect. And that is the fear anytime you make a managerial change or you just change ideas, that you're going to get someone new coming in that's not quite going to rate someone like that. And then that value immediately plummets because it's what have you done for me lately? What have you done on the field recently? And recently he's done almost nothing. So he needs to go somewhere that he can play. And West Ham does seem like the place that could use a striker because of injuries and just, I don't think that Nicholas Füllkrug is going to really fit Graham Potter's system, if I'm being honest. And so, that one makes the most sense. Just get the deal done for Ferguson's sake.
Yeah, and then talking about West Ham, Nick, obviously they've been linked with a US men's national team striker, Ricardo Pepi, who's been excellent at PSV this season. Talk about a bid being a loan with an obligation to buy being turned down, given some reports. But would you like that move for him? I mean, he's probably the most obvious of the US men's national team players to be heading somewhere, or the biggest profile player to be heading somewhere late in the window. Not sure if I like that move for him.
I don't know if I like that move for him long term, but I like whatever center forward they're going to bring in. And not to make this, we're supposed to be talking about Pepe, but just on the West Ham thing, I keep wanting to pick them when we do our Premier League predictions. And then you look at their injuries, and they have Antonio and Füllkrug hurt, and they have two center backs hurt. I think it's one now. But point being, you need players to implement any sort of system. It's why the Ferguson move makes sense. And I think Pepe for 6 months would be in a really good position. So Bowen is the other man out, also out. So West Ham, do I think they're doing better with Potter? Yes, but they need new blood. So we see it with Gio Reyna, right? Right now, we see it with Gio Reyna. If somebody wants you and is going to give you playing time at an elevated level, I kind of like it right now and don't know about how I'll feel about it in the summer.
Yeah, one of those situations where just maybe go for it and go to the Premier League, see how it happens, and what's the worst case scenario? I mean, look at Weston McKennie. Didn't go great for him at Leeds, but we went back to Juve and he's doing pretty well now.
Yesterday.
Exactly. So, nothing ventured, nothing gained, right? I think when it comes to Ricardo Pepi. A lot of other deals obviously bubbling along. We talked about John Duran potentially going to Saudi Arabia from Aston Villa. Looks like that's probably going to happen. Ollie Watkins, Arsenal coming in with bids for him. And then maybe that means that João Felix from Chelsea will go to Aston Villa because he's not really playing that much at Chelsea. There's a few more dominoes and kind of maybe a bit of excitement, Andy, late in the window. Any other deals? I mean, Tell from Bayern Munich, there's a lot of talk about him coming to the Premier League. I think Bayern Munich, the sporting director there has done a great job. He's like, I've never been contacted more about a young player. Just driving that price up a little bit more. So we got a lot of that kind of stuff to look forward to. But mentioned a lot of big names and a lot of forward players there. There's a difference makers for a lot of teams, and it's an important last few days of the window.
Yeah, Tell is a big one because, one, there's multiple clubs from the Premier League that are interested in him. Two, he's a pretty versatile player, and so he could play a couple of different roles. And so, he fits, I think, into probably everybody's system and squad and just the need the teams have this time of year. The finances obviously could be the stumbling block there. One other name that I keep seeing thrown out there and is very interesting to think about, Yohan Wissa has just supposedly one more year left on his contract. Now there's an option there, but we talked about Ollie Watkins a lot this weekend, the age, the value, never going to have an opportunity to cash in like you do. And if you just look at Brentford's squad, they've got 4, 5, 6 players up top who maybe haven't produced at Wissa's level in the Premier League as of yet, but I think you would project that they could come into the team and fill that role. And so that makes sense for a Spurs. I think that Tell as well. That one to me is the obvious one where they just need a warm body that can get forward and run and attack and pass and shoot at this point. And if you can provide that, then we're interested.
Yeah. Nick, who else should we be interested in terms of clubs? Like, who needs to do the most business, do you think, in the Premier League between now and the deadline?
Well, obviously, whatever Manchester United does is going to be extremely interesting because they are clearly not having the answers that Amorim wants. I don't think we've really seen anything out of their center forward play in this system so far. And that, to me, seems like one of the positions that should be pretty quick to benefit, right? Not that Gyökeres is that phenomenal or is a poor talent there, but center forwards feast in this system generally. So that's there. I will selfishly say that two of the teams here in PST Derby land, Spurs have to do something. Spurs have to do something. And maybe with Almiron going back to Atlanta United, Newcastle get the right wing that they want because they seem to have a lot of left-sided players who are playing on the right now. So is there someone that they've had lined up for a while waiting for Atlanta United to strike? So those are the teams that I'm looking there: United, Spurs, Newcastle.
Yeah, maybe they go for someone like Tyler Dibbling and line that up and get it in now before a host of other teams from, just to bring it full circle to include all our teams at PST. That would fit in well with their business model, right? To sign young British players. Eddie Howe loves to do that. So we'll wait and see. There was a lot to sort out, lads, between now and the deadline. And just remind everyone, Sky Sports News will be on Peacock on deadline day, Monday, February 3rd from noon Eastern time until the deadline. And there's obviously a game as well on deadline day, Chelsea against West Ham. So our studio show, I have plenty of coverage. And over at Pro Soccer Talk on NBCSports.com, we'll have loads of coverage all day long with all the latest ins and outs, analysis on what's happening, breaking news. We'll have you covered. Really looking forward to this deadline day because it feels like now things are just heated up and bubbling up very nicely for some big deals to happen just before the deadline arrives.
Hi there, I'm Rebecca Lowe, studio host of NBC's coverage of the Premier League. Don't forget to hit subscribe to watch more videos all season long. And if you want even more Premier League content, from original series to live matches, head over to Peacock.